All right. So sorry for the silly grandstanding, but just wanted to talk through. Hopefully, looking at the interface and being shamelessly prodded by Annie and I, we were able to quickly figure out, sorry, are you up? Thought I was being waved at. Quickly figure out what you were supposed to do with the application. And that's kind of what we're wanting to talk about today, is how to power up Lightning components, but also to draw your user in and make it fairly easy to understand what you're trying to do with them. My name is Paul McCollum. I am a Salesforce evangelist, but during the day, my day job, I'm an enterprise architect at 7-Eleven. I spend a lot of time writing POC code and proof of concept stuff so that we can figure out, I'm going to clear up my screen here, set directions and figure out new ways to use the platform. I participate a lot in the local user group, and that's where I've learned my love for Salesforce and being able to bring in my background, which is JavaScript development. I spend a lot of time also studying UX. I'm really passionate about the cognitive psychology that goes into getting users to click on things, so sorry, I will ramble about that a lot. By training, I'm a microbiologist. I took way too much school. I have minors in chemistry, linguistics, French, and ballet. Don't ask about the ballet. All right, so what we saw, hopefully, was a check-in system. So I wrote this check-in system and wanted to share it, keeping multiple people in mind. It was originally for our user group where we had people sign in and we wanted to catch registrations of a repeating group of users attending the same event. So I decided to genericize it a little bit so that it could be reusable. If you like it, I'm going to put the code on GitHub shortly just to give away, but it should be able to catch multi-tasks, multi-registrations, and so forth. So success for this session is not just around learning to code. It's about learning to manage the back and forth with your user and try and tune up your code and make it more usable. So there's a lot of opportunities to do this with the Lightning component system. So you should be able to take advantage of those as they're developing, but there's also a lot of existing CSS and JavaScript techniques that you can use to engage users. And as we've all dealt with users, I need to get a quick survey. So how many here are Lightning component experts? Like really good at Lightning and don't need to see any of my code? Okay. Just starting Lightning component or JavaScript developers? Outstanding, we will look at code. Okay, but you'll have to forgive me hopping back and forth between Developer Console and PowerPoint kind of sucks, so just don't groan or mumble or trail off. Just give me a second because it's hard to hop back and forth between the code. So again, engaging with users, I saw a great post on Twitter, this GIF, where somebody tried to show what it's like doing user testing or getting people to engage with a new product without any kind of training or context. And it was a GIF of people trying to user test a drinking glass. We have all worked with these users. Now, the fun part about that is whenever I first demoed this session, it was greatness. I showed that GIF to the team where I was doing my session. They helped me a lot. And why are you making fun of the guy who's stuck with and thirsty? And I didn't explain to them what this was. They didn't have context of the joke, so they didn't get it. So thus the slide before where I'm explaining what I'm about to show, because otherwise it just looks like I'm making fun of a silly person. So anyway, that is context. That's setting the pattern. That's the seconds that you have to engage your users can mean the difference between dead silence and a good giggle, or a couple of clicks that you're trying to do. So when we design applications, or when I design, I'm usually trying to manage four things. So display and form, we've got to get people to where they know what they're doing very quickly, and be as obvious as possible. Anything that helps explain context to the user is not wasted information. Signposts, that kind of thing. The next step, so we'll talk about the introduction to Lightning components. Interactions and call to action. What do you want them to do? Now, it was fairly easy. I put that screen in each of your faces and told you kind of what to click. Hopefully, if you saw that screen and there were enough signposts, I don't think there were, you'd know what to do. So making sure that a average user, somebody who didn't write the code, can come in and interact with your application. So feedback and conversation. So after they do what you need them to do, how do you confirm back to them what they've done? The application here, the fancy animation effect that happened was that seat, once you clicked it, vanished. It's taken, you've consumed that resource. It conveyed, hopefully, that you've marked that seat, that's yours, it's gone, and that's done. So we're going to look at a couple of examples of how we can tell that story and give those interactions through there. And then the last part is the back-end synchronization. And I'm sorry you guys didn't get to see it as much. I had a laptop configuration issue and had to hop laptops at the last minute. But each one of the devices, all separately pointing at the same page, was running a back-end conversion that updated the main screen, and each screen was updating each other at the same time. So that's a hidden mechanism for keeping the user engaged and also putting information on there. If you've got this screen up, it could be for task management, and you could see where other people are completing tasks and they're no longer available to you. You don't have to come back to it each day. So, please do not just start coding to provide a possible solution. So what you're trying to do, and what I'm hoping everybody takes away from here, is a bunch of links, and I will get them posted somewhere, of tools to have in your toolbox to make applications talk to your user. Just a plain old submit button in a form field is usually not enough, and especially if you're doing dense information like a bunch of chairs in an auditorium. And I'm super happy that they didn't change the format of the chairs, or my demonstration would have gone really bad. It's not enough. You need to come in expecting to have people that don't know what you're doing. I always get somebody else when I'm writing code, writing apps, somebody else to come in and look at it and say, can you figure out in 4 seconds what you're supposed to do on this page? Once you start coding, you're looking for error messages and no error messages. Those are the 2 states whenever I design. It's either working or not working. I don't know if it's working well or not anymore because I'm just trying to get the error code off the screen. Not that I code with errors. It's actually more efficient to write code without bugs. And I try to do that most of the time. So time spent finding the most appropriate interaction effect is not wasted. And to me, the best application designers are the visual storytellers. So if you can get people engaged with your app, and again, quickly, you've got like half of a second. There's some, Nielsen Norman has some metrics on that, where how long you have with the user before they give up or get frustrated and don't like your app. And it's milliseconds. If you don't draw them in instantly, it's broken. They don't like it and they're looking for the next one. All right, so I'm going to try the first of our slides here, the Lightning Design System. Now, as far as tools that are out there, as you're starting to get into the Lightning component system, they are building up a library of interactions and effects. Now, my favorite cute effect was that vanishing seat where it kind of popped out and blurred away. That, to me, really told the story of the thing you just clicked on is gone. You've deleted that. You've registered for it. They have a library of effects, and we're going to try in our first Alt tab on an unprepared laptop. Okay, everybody needs to stop using the Wi-Fi in here so that this loads faster. All right, so here's a cool gallery. Accordions, avatars, buttons. Now, if you saw on mine, when you took it, it marked it as green. That's not a great full, don't use this again icon. I should have used red. And we'll go in and change that and make that look better in just a second. These are radio buttons. That was new to me. I've forgotten that that became standard. So this is mostly show and tell. We'll get to the code in a minute. There's even animation. So Astro here is a CSS animation. And they've got the code in here for how this works, and then pulling in the SVG and the image. And there's a whole other gallery down here. Now the menu system on the bottom with the code on the top, I'm not a fan of, but we'll go to here to their fade in, fade out library and then scroll back up to see it again. So when I do grow, change the color, fade in and fade out. And fade in, fade out's fine. I like this library, but I wanted something that conveyed more that this was gone than just fade out. So that vanishing is a little more eye-catching, told a little bit more of a story. So there's some other places you can go to get these kind of things. We'll go over that in a second. Just getting started. And here's a set of icons that are built in that you can just reach over and grab with CSS. So it's also important to be consistent. If people have seen stuff before, they know what they're looking for. You can grab this. But so as you're doing your Lightning development, this is actually part of the Salesforce Lightning design system. So if you're working in Visualforce, you can pull this library in and use these same interaction and call to action buttons and icons, as well as the Lightning design system. All right, so everybody knows what GDPR is. It's been a big buzzword. Mostly, I really don't have a whole lot of idea what it is, except that my spam has gone down a little bit, and every single website I go to has a pop-up on it telling me about GDPR something. You have probably noticed that after the first day or so, you read them, and then after that, you just dismissed them over and over and over again. So when you are picking your interaction, when you are trying to work with users, understand that things like that are happening. If you communicate with people mostly in pop-ups, and that's your next call to action is a pop-up, GDPR has changed the way people deal with pop-ups now. They just dismiss them. If you put important information in something, that a modality that people are not interacting with anymore, they are not going to see it. So adjust your designs accordingly. Be aware of trends that are going on in the market. There's a thing called banner blindness that's been very extensively studied. This is another Nielsen-Norman group article where they tracked and they put really valuable information in the place where everybody had started to put banner ads. And wherever banner ads were, which was traditionally the top or down the right-hand side, after a couple years of internet use, we became blind to them. We developed a blind spot in our web browsing for banner ads. We don't look at them, we don't see them. So be aware that users, if you overdo something or if there are patterns out there that are changing and making people sick to death of pop-ups, that's going to make them ignore what you have as the information you're providing as a developer. So just be aware of things like that. Where you put information, make it eye-catching. Modals are still really good. But pop-up windows and so forth, like I said, are getting to where people just clear them without even reading them. So what I'll show you, and we'll have a lot of links to go through, just like the Lightning design system, is a library of interaction and widgets to have handy when you're trying to create your code. And I promise I'll get through all of this boring, flashy stuff, and we'll get into the code here in just a second. But the more real the effect, the easier it is for users to engage with your app. So Smashing Apps website is really good. They are constantly demoing stuff for apps or for app development. They have Photoshop templates to be able to easily pull in styles and designs. And we'll go through a little more show and tell with those right now. All right, now that's one of my favorites. A pure CSS floating semi-transparent cube. I don't know where I'm ever going to use that, but someday I will find a way, a menu, a navigation system that needs a floating multi-transparency cube. And it's got a cool button over here. Now that I actually might be able to find use for. This has been out there for a lot. I've had this bookmarked for many, many moons. There's stuff out there waiting to jazz up your designs and make that web page and that application a little bit different. The thing that annoys me, there is a balance that has to be struck between consistency. I know over and over what I'm getting. The podium's at the front of the stage, the doors are at the back. Consistency is a major thing for your web designs, but new is better. When you change something, it's perceived as better no matter whether it's not a big change or not. So you have to keep users guessing and refreshed with stuff a little bit. So if you're working with apps that are getting kind of stale, refresh the design, change some things, and you'll keep user impression of that app up. All right, let's hop through some more. This is my other favorite one. Now, again, I have not found a good place for this, but I'm going to go for the big pizzazz ones first. These cute signs. Again, I have no idea what I'm going to use this for, but the JavaScript and CSS is in there ready to be used. Okay? Tilt people's perspective, get them involved with your app. You talk about something that can grab somebody's focus, where you're embedding a component in there, pull them in. Let me show you down here this one. This one's a little bit more realistic. Auto zooms into the component, full screens it. I'm not zooming. That is the effect of the transformation. So there's another one that pulls stuff up if you're in the middle of a component. Again, just talking through some things that help grab attention. Use them at your will. Don't go crazy. That one's last. Let's hop through this. That animation drawn entirely with CSS. It's extra library. I didn't find these until afterwards, or my fadeaway button would have looked something like that. Now, some of these are using JavaScript libraries, and they're fantastic. The ones I focused on are the pure CSS ones. So the stuff I'll show you that I implemented, because Lightning makes you jump through some hoops with your JavaScript to where they're doing isolation and componentization and trying to keep the security locker going. CSS, however, super easy to put full CSS stuff in there. I was able to make basically a tiny change and got in there. These are fun. That one's gorgeous. Good looking progress bars. Oh, this is another one. Now you want to do a way to do messaging besides pop-ups. Again, this is full CSS. You see the block over here on this code pen is completely empty. But if I'm going to message somebody in screen, get that up there. That is as wide as that goes. Let's try that one more time. Race car, again, no idea why you would ever need a race car, but you might. Now here's an active call to action button. I think the wobbling was actually the people next door. That was not part of the effect. Here's another great place. Dynamic Drive is always doing stuff. This is a good blog to follow, but being able to flip over to more and better information instead of just alt text. These guys at Tapanis, the code drops tutorials are crazy. So some better looking drop downs. Again, all done with CSS, so you can pop it into Lightning components quickly. Follow the bouncing ball. Let's see, we'll click on the ball and it goes further and further away. Again, I don't know when you're going to need to do that, but it's there. This one I'm using tomorrow. All right, so this web page, this is trying to talk about the Blunton WordPress theme, but that is not the effect. You talk about wanting to train users, shrink the whole interface, and then highlight and give I can see 800,000 places that I'm going to use that. What am I doing with these images? Again, I am just trying to spark the creative juices for what you might do with this. Okay, now this is my favorite, and I'm only going to show you a couple of these. You can get crazy. They stop. There used to be a tag called blink, where they made text blink, and it was part of the original HTML spec. They killed it because people overused it. Do not annoy your users. So this is a fun one. Let's do one of these. Yep. Stop. Okay, that's enough. I can't handle it. It's got to go. All right, don't get crazy. So W3 Schools can show you those are canned. You can grab those and add those to your code in a hurry. If you want to learn how to work them, they're pretty interesting, but they don't take a whole lot. Now the transition ones are weird. So if you get started with these, the transitions are interesting, and I should have showed the demonstration. Just quick. All right, here's the transition. Just hovering goes. Now, if you've programmed in JavaScript before, you're usually looking for some kind of action to fire. All right, on hover, on click, on something. All right, so these hung me up for quite a while. The transition effects inside of CSS, this inside of the style for the div, this is setting a trap. Anytime this item with this class has a change in this value, then it is going to fire, it's going to manage the transition from in the to from state. So over 2 seconds, it's going to take from whatever the width currently is to whatever the width target is. That broke my head. That took a while to figure out. So there's the on hover, and so you can see what we did with the click, or what we did with the hover up here. The rest of them work pretty much as expected. All right, so this is another one. So this is where I got the vanish out effect. This is a great little library. Got to wait a second for it to... Again, half of these, I don't know what you would use them for, but having these out there, knowing that they're there, whenever you've got to tell somebody that this is what's happening, what information is underneath there, rotates around, I'm going cycling to the next thing. Again, no idea what that would mean. That one's pretty. Again, just libraries. These are CSS. We will pick these up. And this is another favorite. All right. Let me see if I can hop over to the code. Fast, let it catch up. Let's hop over into the CSS. So I have this one here that I put in, which is this hover line over here. Let's add that in there. Oop, let's go change one other thing. Let's go to reg. All right. How about red? Red a good color for a taken seat? And I'll go back and look at the CSS really fast. Did you guys get a good look at it? This was the thing we added. Come on. Handling a couple pixels, translating a little overflow. Again, real easy to grab. Let's go reload it. Now, no problem, everything that's taken is red. And also, when you hover over it, has this cute overline strike. I didn't do the actual copying and pasting from there. I'm not going to anger the demo spirits anymore, trying to do that much work, but hopefully get the picture. That's really easy. You take the standard CSS class that you're using, put the word this in front of it, Bob's your uncle. All right, sorry for the strobe. Hopefully we get there. All right, so again, talk about quickly engaging your users. Probably would have been better if on that aisle check-in seat, I'd actually put the icon of a chair. It might have been a little bit quicker to grab in and grab you. You can see right here, everybody knows what these are. We'll probably used these a dozen times. The windows, notice the windows on the cockpit and the coffee station and the bathroom. There is absolutely no functional reason to have that detail on this image except that it orients the user. The point is clicking the buttons for the seat, but the image of the wings helps tell you where the wing seats are and where the extra leg room, but this tells you you're getting on a plane, this is closer to the front, we know where to be. You're orienting the users to the task at hand. You're guiding them into the call to action, where you're trying to do. So you're getting them to engage with your, with your task. Again, and let me hop over here. Again, trying to get everybody to come in and check in. Everybody's looking at me weird. Am I stealing your fingerprints? What are you doing? Now, what didn't happen, I went to a UX conference last week, couldn't find it. Walked into the hotel, no idea where it was. I was a little early. It was on the second floor. They had not a single sign leading up to the second floor to where the UX conference was. And it's a usability conference. So I had some comments for them after the end of the conference. It was a lot easier when there were bustling crowds after there, but they didn't plan for the first couple of people. So the application was there when reality's lacking. Now, if I'd done something fun like this, I don't know why I printed an extra sheet, and went through and labeled the aisles. Oh, might have made more sense. I'm not going to go through this whole thing and shove it. I printed extra papers and I don't want to trash this place up. But when reality is lacking, fix reality. Make sure that if you can go put a signpost, if you can put a QR code, if you're registering for something, put the registration link on the physical object. Place the physical object there, but get a tie-in. You can go impact reality, put signs up, guideposts, and change the world as opposed to just trying to do it through your app. If I'd had that laid out and had the aisle markers set up, I think it would have, everybody would have figured that out a little faster. All right, so let's go back in. Okay, so everybody's here. So has everybody worked through all of the intro JavaScript Lightning component developers have all played with the or iteration piece, right? Which is a standard looping construct. It's a little hard to squeeze conditional code into, but it's there. CSS components, easy, very straightforward, and then functions that fire on objects. So it's very easy to wire up code attached to specific objects. It was not as easy to wire up something that ran and updated the entire DOM. All right, so here's the basic code for Aura iterations. And I cut off a little bit so that it was actually be visible on how I put in an extra line feed whenever I got to a fourth iteration. So as I got to 4 seats, I went to an extra line. Every 2 seats that wasn't a 4 seat, I put a space in there so that I'd have an aisle representation. So again, it's just some basic Lightning component code. You can pipe in, and this was really handy, as you're building these out, and if you've done jQuery, this is a lot of what you do to try and get control over your DOM, is insert data, or the data attribute elements. Now in jQuery, you can go in and make up whatever element name you want, or in HTML, you can make up whatever element name you want, and then you can call it with a jQuery selector. Lightning one-ups this, so if you name it with data underscore, it actually pulls it into an object that's available to whatever function you click on. So whenever you fire the on my function this, you can access this data component object and pull whatever came along with the click, or whatever was there in that element. So as I'm loading this element up, as I'm building these seats, and the seats originally attached to an email address, a person, or attendee, I take all that information over to the JavaScript function, and I can fire Apex working on that, but I don't have to go back and have a really ugly embedded data function inside of each element. Nope, may have gone too far. But yeah, they're the Aura-enabled classes where I'm grabbing all the possible seats and then all the people that are registered. This is the first builder page. Now again, this is pulling from a fixed set of items, and this is your variable registry. So I built it in with an instance parameter to where you can change days. If you hit a drop down, I'm registering for session 1, I'm registering for session 2. Whenever you hit the drop down, you can update the page and it'll just pull back the whoever's taken what seat for whatever day or whatever class. But you can see the Apex code, super complicated, right? All right, so the old school CSS. Now, I'm sorry, it's almost unreadable. There is a lot of CSS, but this is just for the button piece. I really like that yellow button. But all you have to do, my original code when I was prototyping this in HTML and then moving it into Lightning components, was add the this on here. So if you've done anything with CSS, and that's why I went and found CSS effect after CSS effect, because you just paste it in. Now it wires this in to make sure that your CSS only gets applied to that component element. A lot of the hoops you're having to jump through are so that they can componentize it and secure that container against affecting the DOM for the rest of the application of the page. So that's more on the complex selector. You can see up here, this is what I used to do. Used to embed the username and class in there. It's the same thing as before. But instead of having this really long, you can see how long that is underneath there hidden. You move over to just this very simple div. Repeatable div. Yep, clean one. Yep, and here's, sorry, I've already jumped the gun. So this is accessing the data set. So event.currentTarget data set include ID. So everywhere that I had uname, email, instance as a data attribute comes over, and the function is able to grab that really quickly. So there's a couple of hoops to jump through, but your code ends up being a little bit cleaner. All right, so the asynchronous part. Now this is the fun thing. This is the thing that kept all of the tablets, all the laptops in sync and was working it through the back end. So as the page is firing up in the do init, I'm calling a helper function called poll apex. And it is reaching out to the regular apex call. And this took some work. So poll apex is doing a set interval. If you use set interval, hopefully JavaScript developers, this is saying, take this function and iterate every 5,000 milliseconds or 5 seconds, recall this function call this function again. So every 5 seconds, my page is polling to get the current things and then re-updating and after it's coming back, it's hitting doing the callback and queuing that. And then at the very last, it's adding the regged, which we just set to red. That's the regged class to each element that has that. Now this is the one place, and I'm telling on myself here, that I'm cheating. All right, document.getElementID is not within the spirit of the law of the Lightning component because this is a full DOM access thing. It's still allowed, and I'm still playing nice, and it still works. But I have a feeling I've got some work to do to grab the DOM element the right way in a controlled method as opposed to talking to the native page DOM. Like I said, all my JavaScript developers out there know what I'm talking about. This is the function used for everything, but that's all there was to it. This function starts up a counter, runs every 5 seconds, goes out, grabs what's there, and then loops through and updates the DOM and keeps both things in sync. I could have made either side disappear. I could make each person, each day, each session be a different color, lots of places to play. This took a little bit of figuring out to get and wire that into. If you have any questions, come see me. The summary is, engage with your users, think about what you're trying to get them to do, have that idea before you start banging out code, get an idea of the interaction you want to have with the user, and then design to that. Get some other eyes on it, and then have that library of links, icons, whatever, and go out and grab the most effective thing, something that looks good and drives participation from it. Like I said, I will be putting this on GitHub. I don't have that set up. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter, I will get either Dex or source code. I'm glad to share that. That wasn't related to anything work. I just did that as a kind of a pet project. So, and happy to talk to any other JavaScript maniacs, mad scientists out there that are passionate about this. So please reach out. Any questions? So I think I'm right up to my time, so I'll take questions out on the side. So thank you guys a lot for coming out.